Long time ago, when I married my wife, she says, you know something, every time you drink wine, you don't talk much. I said, I'm sorry, I was going to respond to you after I responded to the wine. The wine was talking to me.
Sit back and grab a glass. It's Wine Talks with Paul K.
Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. We're here in the middle of a conversation with Zaya Younan. You go ahead, Younan?
Younan, yes.
Younan, about to have an amazing conversation about luxury brands in general. So you're just stepping in, tuning in. Welcome to the show, and so glad to have you here. And thank you for coming out. Where did you come from?
I came all the way from the Valley, Woodland Hills.
Oh my goodness! I'm sorry.
No, that's quite all right.
I do have a portable studio that I take around, and can come to the office. But what I found is that when I come to your office, you get distracted, and people are coming in the door. They want to talk to you. What's on?
Actually, this was a good memory lane for me because 30 years ago, I was a president of TRW Automotive System Group.
Really?
Yeah, and I used to drive this route all the way, a little bit further. Used to get off to Irvindale. And when you get off to Irvindale, we had 22 plants in there, and where we make different automotive electronic for OEM, for GM, Mercedes-Benz, and others. And one of the components that we invented, and we start making it still to this day in Irvindale, was an airbag crash sensor. So
wow, I remember TRW was in the automotive business. Are they still? Didn't they move to Huntsville, Alabama?
No,
or something?
No, in Cleveland. They actually TRW, is established 1900. Initially established in aerospace, and then in the credit.
Right.
If you remember TRW years ago, yes. And then automotive system groups, and they sold the credit, they sold the aerospace. They still remain the automotive group, which is multi-billion dollars industry for them. Yeah.
Well, the wine shop that's in the picture stayed alive because of TRW, Boeing, all the El Segundo-based tech companies that support all the executives used to live in Palos Verdes.
Yeah, do you remember how many back when you're talking about? El Segundo was full of aerospace companies.
That's all it was.
Yeah, it was back then. It was a leading industry in California. But most of them moved to other states, and automotive stays here, and it became less. I mean, still like Tesla's moving out, for example, of California and so forth, because of various regulation. But it used to be a major manufacturing hub. I mean, California to this date has the world's 7th largest economy.
They said that I have known that, but I keep thinking, how is that possible considering today's climate of politics and all the industry that's leaving? But it's still pretty big.
Well, years ago, during a Reagan time, when Reagan was a governor of this state, the state of California had the world's 3rd largest economy.
I know, it's unbelievable.
It was back then, the state of California economy, GDP was bigger than China.
Wow.
20-some years ago.
That shows you how we can screw it up, doesn't it?
Exactly.
So let's go. We could probably talk about a lot of different things, but I was looking at the list of luxury brands that you own, which include, looks like a number of hotels throughout the world, both 4 and 5-star hotels, and then a number of vineyards, as well as golf courses, cigar brand, distribution, design agency in Paris. How I mean, can I scroll this far? Is there? I mean, you came here and you were 13 years old from Iran.
Yeah.
And with now we know $25 in your pocket.
Yeah.
And was this a dream? Were you leaving the regime? Is that the point in the 70s?
Well, I mean, it was 70s. You're right. And at age of 13, you don't understand the regime. You're a little kid, right? But I'm a Christian Assyrian who live in Iran. And, Iran is a great country, but it was a Muslim country. And I used to live in a neighborhood that I used to fight my way to school at age of 12 every day, right? Because we were Christian, we were light-skinned, and people always pick on you, right? So at age of 12, I decided, I said, you know what? I don't see a future for myself in this country. I'm going to go to America, right? Just decided to go to America, right? And my mother did, and my father didn't know him. My father was a truck driver. I hardly see him because he was an interstate truck driver. And my mother, raising 6 kids, and She was a housewife and, wasn't much involved in raising us, And I determined what I need. I determined I need a passport, visa, ticket.
At 12.
At 12. And from 12 to 13, I developed a business model where I used to paint people's bicycle, because where I live, literally all the bicycles were black. All the bicycles were black. So I came up with an idea. I says, how about if I charge $5 approximately back then? I charge $5 for every bicycle owner, and I can paint his bicycle red, blue, white, any color he wants, right? And I used to paint him, not a sophisticated process, a paintbrush. Literally, it used to take me 20, 30 minutes to paint it. It used to take 2 hours for dry. Used to call the guy, pick it up, and I used to get my money. At age of 12, and by age of 13, I had raised enough money to pay for my airfare. And my mother didn't know I was coming to America until the night before when I was packing my luggage. She says, what are you doing? I says, I'm packing my luggage. She says, where are you going? I says, America. They said, where? How? With whom? Who's going to take care of you? I had all answers for all that. And then she says, where is your passport here? Where is your visa here? Where's your ticket here? Who's going to take you to airport if you don't have a car? Ali, the taxi driver across the street, I won a chess set, and he agreed to take me to the airport. I had it all figured out.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, at the age of 13. Can you imagine these days? You don't send your 13-year-old kid down the street to 7-Eleven. Back then, I traveled across the world. And it was funny, I didn't have enough money to buy a direct ticket, so I had to buy a ticket with 3 stops. And each stop had a 8 to 10 hours layaway.
Wow.
So I went from Tehran to Amsterdam. I had an 8 hours layaway. From Amsterdam to Frankfurt. From Frankfurt to John F. Kennedy. From John F. Kennedy to LaGuardia. From LaGuardia to Chicago.
You zigzag your way across the country.
It was a cheap ticket, thank God, with $25 in my pocket.
1970.
77.
That was right when trouble started.
Yeah, trouble started exactly a year after in 78, yes.
Did you see that coming as a kid?
No, I was a kid. I wasn't paying attention to it. But my parents felt it at 78. And I came here by myself for 1 year, and then they followed me in 78. And we live in Chicago. I went to school up there, and I graduated university. And the first job I had was General Motors.
So they liked this idea. Well, they obviously were probably shocked at first, like this, who is this kid that thinks he is? He's taking off. Did your brother and your sisters, or do you have brothers and sisters that knew this?
I had 5 sisters. And
did they know you were doing that?
No, nobody knew I was doing it, seriously. Nobody knew I was
What gave
doing
you the gumption to even think that? I mean,
I tell you,
I
determined, the lights went up early for me, thank God. And I determined that I need to live in a country that is civilized, a country that it's blessed with opportunities, a country that I want to learn the language. I want to be educated from there. And all of this came to my mind at age of 12. I was in the street playing soccer, and I saw a mid-aged man, American man with his wife, kind of lost in the street. They were American tourists. So I couldn't speak English, but they couldn't speak Farsi. So somehow they communicated with me that they wanna someplace to go use the bathroom. So I said, yeah, come to my house. You can use the bathroom in my house. And I told my mom, and my mom was intrigued that there was 2 American, wife and a husband, in our house for the bathroom. And then she fed him lunch, because we were amazed. There
That's
are
amazing.
American in the streets, our streets, right? We fed him lunch, and the guy, his name was Father Hood. He was a principal of Catholic high school in Chicago, St. Viator. I talked to him, and he spoke a little Farsi, and we had a guy who was translating for us, our neighbor who spoke a little English. So he planted the idea in my head. He says, you should come to America, it's a nice country, Christian country, civilized country. You should go get your high school education there and go university there. So that sparked a light. And from there, I went out and I started the whole journey.
So the primary language is Farsi. Did they speak any English or French?
Who
and
me?
where you
Well,
grew up?
well, when I grew up, the primary language was Farsi, but as I told you, I was Assyrian, Christian Assyrian,
Yeah.
ancient Assyrian, Babylonian. So we speak Aramaic at home.
Oh,
So
really? Wow.
back then, the only language I spoke was Aramaic at home with my family and Farsi and outside.
And then you came to America and learned English while you're here.
Yeah, it was easy. And a matter of fact, I remember I went to high school. That Fatherhood, the guy who I helped in the street, was a principal of it. And at age of 13, I came and they took a test from me, and they put me straight as a freshman in high school. And one of the requirements was you have to have a second language in that high school. So they put me in a German class. So I said, wait a minute, I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time learning English, and I have to learn German too. And they said, well, it's a requirement. You have to have another language, German or Spanish. So I took German. So it's funny, I was translating everything from
Farsi.
from Farsi to English, from English to German, and then communicating. But sometimes when you go to these trial and tribulations, you wonder, why I'm going through it. Why so much complexity? Why so much negativity? Why so much downfall? Why so much resistance? Why so much barrier? And often you get tired of dealing with it. But looking back now to all those, I see what a blessing I had, because it prepared me. I was fortunate to experience that at an early age. It prepared me to build a character strong enough to understand what my vision is, to understand what it takes to implement that vision, and a persistent to make sure it is
You fall through,
completed.
but it seems like that was part of your DNA. Just to get on a plane at 12 years old or 13 years old, to do that would tell you something about your character as a child and your desires and your drive.
Yeah.
I mean, do you still think, now that when you came here, that in today's environment, that the opportunities exist for other young foreign kids to come to America and have a dream?
Oh, absolutely. We have operation literally today all over the world. So I travel all over the world. And I think to this day, there is no country that can come close to America in having an open platform and a culture of preparation for anybody to be a different person in a nanosecond.
Wow.
You are a poor person and you want to be rich, it's easy for you to get there. You just have to follow the script.
Right.
What
You have to
everybody
want
have
that,
done. Exactly. You have to want it, and you have to have a level of drive to implement it, right? And one motto is that never give up. Never give up and never give up.
Do
right?
do your children have this recognition yet?
Some do, some don't. And part of it, or most of it, is my fault, right? Because I grew up in a terrible environment where my mom didn't know if I had lunch, if I had dinner, if I brushed my teeth, if I slept, if I was sick.
Right.
And when you grow up in that environment, it hones you and it shapes you,
Of course,
to be a tough individual, because you don't have the parents component
There's
behind
no net.
you.
There's no safety net.
Exactly.
There. Right.
And when you live to that environment, what you want to be opposite of your parents to your kid. You see?
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes you don't know where the boundary is. You do too much of it or not enough of it. So I was a different father to my kids than my father was to me.
But see, it's not every day, even though we're not in this daily business anymore. The appreciation for the lifestyle of wine, you're a Francophile as well as I am. My father spoke French in the house when he could. It's not every day that I don't thank him for, despite the fact that I did not grow up in a difficult situation like you did. I grew up at the beach. I had whatever I needed when I needed it. But certainly all his drive and entrepreneurship and ability to handle life was given to me. I may not have recognized it at the time, but I thank him every day for guiding me into this part of my life.
Of course. But had I had an opportunity to design my life story, I wouldn't want to do it any different than the way I did.
I wouldn't. Yeah.
No.
No.
I went to that difficulty.
Yes.
I rather not having a shoes, and the only time you get shoes is during the Christmas because your parents have to buy you something. So they buy you something that you really need because you have so many holes in your shoes that you just cannot cover it anymore, right? So it was painful journey, but reflect back to it. You have licked your wounds, you have recovered, and you appreciate the training.
So your career then, you got out of school, you spoke German.
Yeah.
He spoke Farsi. How many people in the world actually speak German and Farsi?
Yeah, they're two different languages. Huh?
But you got a job at GM, you said, and you are in such diversified industries today. It's a fascinating route to get to. And of course, this is a wine show, so we're supposed to talk about wine, and that's how you and I met. But just briefly tell me, what did you see in American industry when you got a job in corporate America? That's GM's corporate America. I mean, it's got all layers and all the politics.
Yeah, I had 20 interviews before I graduated at university. Like they used to come. I went to a very good university. It was #1 in engineering, mechanical engineering. So 1 year before we graduate, all the major companies will come interview and pick the students, and then they give you one summer co-op to prove yourself, and then boom, they give you a job. So I had 20 offers, but I took GM because it was the highest paid offer, and that was very important for me. And my first job was in LaGrange, Illinois, outside of Chicago, where I worked for GM, not an automotive group, electromotive division. Back then, GM was the largest locomotive producer in the world. So I worked in the advanced design team. So when I worked in the advanced design team, I was designing a motor for locomotive, which are either DC motor, direct current motor, right? Big motor, because that's what a locomotive goes on. And every time we would design a motor, after you finish designing it, it'll take 5 to 7 years to make prototype, test it, to make sure, to verify your design. Your design does exactly what you thought it will do, right? So I was very frustrated by that process. I said, why should I have to wait so long, right? So at age of 20, because I graduated at age of 19, at age of 20, I wrote the first software, finite differences software, 3-dimensional modeling software. And I wrote it, I patented everything. And where we could take the physical object, do a 3-dimensional design in a computer, and subject it to various performance testing. So then we don't have to make the product and do it. So we can skip all that process, save a lot of money. So when I did that, I was recognized in General Motors. There was a lot of story written about me because of my age and what I've done. Remember, back then, there were no software. Back then, I'm talking about 40 years ago, there were not even a computer. It was a huge mainframe computer, huge, size of the car, in the middle of our engineering floor, and we had to take an appointment of when we can use it, and no engineer could use it longer than 30 minutes.
Okay,
right?
Let's just slow for a second. That would be like 1984 or 85.
No, that was 84.
Yeah, okay, so 84. I mean, I had a CPM machine, and the only language that I even recognized was BASIC. And here you are writing 3D modeling on a mainframe that probably had the horsepower of, my phone probably has 20 times the horsepower then.
Oh yeah, and the thing is, at General Motors, I didn't get enough time to work on the computer. As I told you, 30 minutes was max, and you had to schedule it. And it was a paper schedule. You had to go see which time slots available.
Not a computer schedule.
No, schedule to use a computer.
Of course.
So I remember, I was 20, young engineer. At 5 o'clock, I remember 5 o'clock, everybody can go home. At 4:30, everybody started cleaning up their desk. 4:45, they have filled off their briefcase and they're ready. They're ready for 5 comes. And at 5 o'clock, we have 4,000 engineers in that building. 4,000 engineers are rushing to the door to go downstairs, sit in the car, and get out, go home.
Jeez.
So I said, that's stupid. why do I do that? I'm just going to sit here for a couple hours. Nobody's using a computer. I can use a computer all night if I want.
Yeah.
And then when I go, there is no traffic, right? I can get out of the parking lot. Imagine getting out of that parking lot used to take 20 minutes. Get off the parking lot and go home. So I used to stay to 7, 8 o'clock. And one day I was noticed by a division president who came for visit. And he saw me, a young kid, 9 o'clock at night doing a computer. He says, why are you here? I said, I'm working on a computer. He says, but it's 9 o'clock. You should have gone home at 5. I said, I understand, but it's difficult to get on a computer. So I decided to stay when everybody leave. I can work on computer. He says, what is it so important for you to work on this computer? And I explained to him what I'm doing, and he was fascinated by it. And I didn't know who he was. I didn't know who he was. He was the 4th highest rank in entire General Motors. And General Motors back then was the largest company in the world, had 3 million employees globally.
Wow.
Yeah, 3 million. Back then, there was no Amazon, there was no Apple. You know, these companies were huge, right? So he says, do you mind if I come here tomorrow at 5 o'clock with you? I said, sure. So I don't know who he is. And, you know, tall American man, 60 years old.
Did you have a heavy accent?
I did, yeah. Just like I do today. Usually
but I mean.
I did. So he came next day, and he brought me a lunch. And then they used to have a executive building where all the executives were. They used to have their own lunchroom, their own shoe polishing guy, their own haircut place, GM executive, right? And he sat next to me. He brought me a sandwich. I ate it. And he says, show me what you're doing. So I show him what I'm doing. And then he says, where can I see this in operation? And I says, pick something that is important for you in this business. He says, axle. We have so much problem with the axle. Remember, locomotive is a pure iron, right? It's sitting on an axle that is iron. It's sitting on a rail that is iron, right? And imagine how vibration, torques, dynamic stress could affect iron to iron, because there is no damper to damper.
Yeah, right.
You see, like imagine you're driving your car, you're driving it on a nice fat tire, plastic tire. Imagine if you were driving it on a rim, how uncomfortable a ride would be. So I explained that to him. He says, wow, so I can ask you if you can make a locomotive that does 2,000 RPM going down the road at 25 degrees slope. I said, yes, let me show you. And I went, pop, 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 show it to him, and I stimulate the drive.
You're far enough along in the product at that point.
Yeah, it was very easy for me. I mean, back then, it was about 480,000 initial phase one was almost 500,000 lines.
Wow.
Yeah. But
that used to be a metric back in the day, right? How many lines of code?
Exactly,
right?
yeah. And I showed it to him. So next morning, I came to work, and human resource manager came to me. She said, Mr. Younan, pack up all your stuff. I said, why? And back then I didn't have office naturally. I had a table this big. We were on the floor. Nobody had office except directors, vice president. All the engineers were sitting in an open area. And we all had literally this big. That's it. So, I'm sitting here, there's an engineer sitting here. I said, what did I do? She says, I really don't know what you did, but you need to pack up. It's your last day here. And my boss, which was an engineering supervisor, he used to respect me a lot because he saw, I did the co-op with him one summer before, so he saw this young guy who's really advanced in engineering mind. I said, Steve, what's going on? I got fired. He didn't know. He says, well, maybe you broke the law. You were working late. I says, yeah, but what's the problem with working late? I was working late for the company. I was trying to, because I couldn't get enough time on a computer, so I had to stay late. He says, I don't know. So I was sorry. And it was the first thing in my mind is, what am I going to tell my father and mother that I've been working here for 3 months, and I lost my job, right?
And your mind is going nuts.
Right. So as I'm going down, I went to another human resource, which she was her boss, vice president of human resource. She said, Zaya, where is your house? I said, it's about 45 minutes from here. She says, how long does it take you to pack? I said, pack for what? She says, pack for a month or so. I said, half an hour. She says, great. We'll send a car to pick you up an hour and a half. And I don't dare to ask why, what's going on? What am I packing for, right? So I sat in my car and I went home, right? Went home, I started packing. My parents said, what's going on? I said, look, I don't know what's going on. Don't ask me a question, please. The only thing I know, I need to pack right now. So my mother, she said, whoa, there is a long, beautiful black car outside of our house. I mean, we had a little shitty house, middle of the nowhere. She'd never seen a limousine back then, except in the streets or in the TVs. It's a huge limousine, stretch limousine outside. So the guy came in, he said, Mr. Younan, are you ready to go? I said, yeah, still don't know where I'm going. I sat there, we go to Chicago O'Hare, special hangar, they had a hangar. There was a 737 GM jet in there. I go in there, and that guy comes in. He introduced himself as a president of Electromotive Division and also executive vice president of all GM.
The same guy was sitting with you.
And he says, I said, well, what are we doing? He says, you are going now to Detroit to work in the GM headquarters. And I told your story to the GM chairman. GM chairman back then was Jack Smith. That was his name. And he asked for you to work with him directly.
Wow.
I'm 20 years old.
You're just new to the country, basically, still.
So we go in there.
And the ways of the Americans, right?
Unbelievable. I mean, to me, it's been 40-some years past. And sometimes I think about this, and I even have a hard time believing that I lived that journey, right?
Yeah.
So in the morning, I get up, I go, the headquarters back then was in downtown Detroit. I go to the top floor, and, all executives, and GM chairman, Jack Smith, had an office probably 5,000 square feet, right?
Of course. It's America.
I walk in there. He was a short guy, short, fat guy. He walked in, he says, are you Zaya boy? I says, yes. He says, Deborah, take him to the office. So he had a huge office, and they had set up a small desk like this, way away from his desk on the corner. And he says, you be working for me now because I heard you're pretty smart. And I'm going to have you do various analysis for me. So you just sit there, don't talk until I talk to you. I'll give you a task, and when I ask you, how far are you, then you'll answer me. So I says, great, right? Back then, GM used to produce the jet engine for the aircraft before they sell it. And they had a huge vibration issue with the jet engine, right? And my first day working there, right? And the head of the jet division, the president of jet division, who was working for GM, of course, and reports to Jack Smith, he was there. And they were talking about the problem, about the delivery issues, and about the vibration, right? It was a major issue. You can't have vibration in the jet issue.
And are you like completely still dumbfounded? Like, completely. What am I doing here?
I'm still dumbfounded to this day.
Yeah.
And again, I was a little guy, and this guy came in, huge guy, 52 years old, 6'6", ex-football player for Duke University, and now, all-American executive.
As American as you can get.
This is my first day. So he finished talking to him, and he left, and he says to me, hey, Younan. I said, yes. He says, what did you think about Eric's statement? I said, well, I kind of disagree with him. He said, how is that? I said, the vibration is not mechanical. He says, what do you mean? I said, we don't get vibration in test level, right? We don't get vibration when an aircraft is not up in the air. We only get vibration when we hit 3,000 RPM and above, right? So it's got to be something with the airflow.
He's like, what?
He said, what? He called his secretary. He says, is Eric gone? She says, he said, call him back. He was going to go back to Ohio. That's what the factory was. And of course, he's flying the company plane too. He says, Eric, take Younan with you. I want him to do some study for me in the plant. He said, who the fuck is Younan? He says, that guy right there, that's Younan. He says, what the fuck? Who the fuck is he? He says, he's nobody, but someday he might be a little bit more than a fuck. So I strongly recommend you take him seriously. Take him. He said, take him for what? What do you want me to babysit him? He said, no, take him to your plant and let him loose. You don't need to do anything. Just give him an access card that he can talk to anyone. And a sure thing, we went in there and we solved the problem in a very short period of time. It's a huge problem. It's a safety issue. All the airplane was grounded, both Airbus in France and Boeing in America. We solved it. And then I went back there and my first glass of wine that I had. And so I went in there after 4 days to the office Friday before the weekend. He says, Younan, you doing something for dinner? I said, no. He says, have you had steak ever? I said, no, not really. I've never had steak. I'm 20 years old. I never had a steak in my life, right? He says, well, we're going to have a good steak tonight, you know.
Wow.
So
Talk about American, right?
Talk about America, right? GM, chairman, Jack Smith, they running the biggest company on the earth. And this little fucking guy from middle of the Iran, Tehran, right? Father truck driver, right? So we go out there, and back then you could smoke in the streets and restaurants. Back then you could smoke in the airplane. You could smoke in the hospital even.
Yeah.
So we walked into a restaurant. He introduced me to cigar. You know, he pulled up some cigars. Him and I started smoking it. He bought wine. He's introduced me to the red wine. He was a great Bordeaux lover back then. He was a great Bordeaux lover.
That's interesting.
Because I remember the bottle that he bought, it was 1979 Petrus. Right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we drank it. And then, sure thing, I became buddy with this guy. And then I grew from there. I became Oldsmobile president at the age of 27, which is to this day unheard of, right? And then from there I grew up. Anyway, that's it. Boring stories. I just bored your audience.
No, it's an incredible story, and I think we should do it again one day. I'll come out to your office and tell some more. We're already more than halfway through this, and we haven't even talked about wine. But you just gave me a great segue into wine and the luxury goods, because this is an important part of that lifestyle. But I did want to ask you one question. Do you think, because you came from Iran, and there is this sort of hotbed of tech thought and engineering skill sets that come from the Middle East. Mm-hmm. Armenia is known for it now for all the coding and things. Do you think that's an asset of the Middle Eastern mentality and brain set?
A study has been done, to answer your question. A study has been done on different part of the world, right? Mm-hmm. And with the human brain processing, because they find out the people that grow up in America for generation is very much the same. The people that grow up in India is very much the same. The people that grow up in China, pretty much the same. The people that grow up in Iran are very much the same. And the conclusion of that report was that it's got to do with the diet, right? We eat certain food in each country, right? Mm-hmm. When we eat those food, certain food have certain vitamins for certain part of our brain. Mm-hmm. So that's why, for example, mathematics in Iran, physics in Iran, chemistry in Iran, a pneumatic thing is very, very easy for people to understand. Yeah. And they attribute that to the food we ate,
I
because
can see that.
Each country has its own specific food that we eat, and that food, it nourish certain level of your body and a brain that improve certain aspect of processing, mental processing.
I totally believe that. Yeah. I mean, your brain is mostly fat, and your cuisine in Iran, the Armenian cuisine, it's full of fat. I mean, we eat a lot of butter.
And also they use a lot of herbs. I mean, the strength comes in the herb, somak, which is saffron, somak. Somak and saffron are flowers. Flowers grow in a certain part of Iran now, in Turkey, or cultivate even in China now. But that is supposed to be unbelievable for your body.
I
These are
think
all
that's right.
herbs. These are all God-created medicine for us to enjoy and stay healthy.
So, the Americans are just figuring this out now. Now we have Robert Kennedy who's saying, "Look, you guys don't understand."
I tell you, God bless this guy
I know, seriously.
because he's talking about the subject that everybody prior to him were afraid to talk about.
Yep.
And what has concerned me is that we are in 21st century, right? Why we have more cancer patients today than ever before? Because at 21st century, the world is smarter, more modern, more technology, more equipment, more medicine. We have cured a lot of diseases where they don't exist anymore,
right,
like polio and many other things. But why cancer is not? And John F. Kennedy, of course, obesity is an issue, but is not a life or death issue. I worry more about people. I worry about 4 or 5 years old kid who has a cancer. How does this kid get a cancer? And it goes through the terrible experience of medical treatment, right? And it is all contributed to various chemical found in the food and in our water.
Right.
And it was John F. Kennedy Robert Kennedy for the first time that mentioned we have PFAS in our water, right? Which is the most dangerous compound to human being, right? And remember, years ago when you and I were child, we don't drink water only when we were thirsty, right? We would drink water maybe for breakfast, maybe for lunch, maybe for dinner. And if there was a time that we wanted water, we drank it from those faucets. Remember that?
From the hose.
Now, everybody's hanging a bottle of water on their shoulder.
Yeah.
Everybody's walking in the streets, walking in the mall, walking everywhere with the water in their hand. And they think water is very healthy for them. Well, let me tell them something. First of all, excessive water is not healthy at all, right? First of all, right? Second of all, this is not the water you think it is. It's in that plastic cup, right?
Exactly.
Plastic bottle.
Microplastics.
That plastic bottle came from someplace.
Yeah.
Came from Denver, Iowa, Hawaii, Fuji, came from someplace. Well, where do you think they stored this plastic bottle when it came from Fuji? Inside of the plane where there's air conditioning? No, the cargo.
Yeah.
And then they had to truck it. And then they had to drive it in the summer in a truck that is steel container on it. And that release the certain dangerous aspect of the plastic into a water. Mm-hmm. So one thing for your audience, for love of God, only drink water when you're thirsty. You don't have to kill yourself chucking gallon or 2 gallons of water every day.
And my daughter, my daughter's in New York. She is she's a French trained boulangère, really. Wow. But she only drinks from glass. Mm. She will not drink water from the plastic because, they know this microplastics. But you're looking at these two books right here, The French Paradox, which we know about, which is the lifestyle of the French, the Mediterranean lifestyle, which would include the Middle East. And then also this book right here called Wine is the Best Medicine by Dr. Murray, a French doctor of the 70s, talking about using wine to help. But let's talk about that for a second. Here you are at GM. They take you out for a steak. They have a bottle of Petrus. They had no idea what you're drinking. Was that the beginning of your love of luxury items, or
Exactly. Well, I always loved luxury items. When I was a kid, I came to United States at age of 14. I was a busboy, and I was working for a restaurant called Black Fox in a Holiday Inn in Loring Meadows, Illinois.
Well, a hotbed of cuisine out there. Huh?
Yeah, if you call it that. But I found a magazine. It's called Rob's Report.
Yes.
Right?
Back then, I didn't remember how old it was.
Yeah. And I started going to the images because Rob Report magazine, I think, is the most fascinating magazine on the earth. It has a picture of every beautiful thing in it. And it inspires you. It wants you to want things. It triggers certain part of your brain to have a stronger drive going forward. So I always wanted a thing. But when fortunate at the age of 20, I started flying, private aircraft at GMs, I was making a lot of money because after my first patent, second patent, I have over 2,000 patents in the United States today. I was getting a large fat check, right? Because when I was working for GM, if I have a patent that is a patent, is the name of GM and me because I developed it while I was in GM, I would get $10,000 check, right? If that patent is used in production, of one model, I get $100,000 check.
This was the GM policy.
This is
of all
most company policy.
Okay.
IBM, every company has that to encourage people. If my patent was developed, was used in every model of the vehicle, I will get $1 million.
Back then.
Back then, for a 20, well, I developed airbag when I was 22 and for automotive, and I get $1 million check. And I used to go buy myself nice clothes. I used to buy my family stuff. And I started understanding why luxury is luxury. Because luxury not only has a quality, when you drinking a luxury bottle of wine, driving a luxury vehicle, have a luxury watch, it is so complex that it debates with you. It makes you think. It makes you understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So not only you enjoying driving a car, but you get a fulfillment, emotional and soul fulfillment from it, because you see so many beautiful things, so well designed, so well constructed, how it makes your life easily. It becomes a very powerful thing in the world. So luxury is fascinating to me. And I have said that my goal, I think I'm a little bit too late. I'm 62 years old. But my goal is, before I retire, to create a company more successful and bigger than LVMH, Louis Vuitton, right?
Well, based on the website I saw, you're on your way to doing that.
I know Bernard Arnault very well because MPA Creation, which is my design company in Paris, we design component and POS for them. So I know him very well. And remember, LVMH was around since 1804, right? But nobody knew about LVMH until Bernard Arnault bought it 40 years ago from bankruptcy for 5,000 euros. And he's the one who converted to make it who they are. So yes, luxury is always anything. And the luxury wine is very interesting because when you open a bottle of wine, not much thought process has gone into making it. It's a blanc wine. From the first sip to the 10th sip, from the first glass to the second glass, it's consistent taste, gives you the same feeling that you forgot about it. You stop to think about the wine. Mm-hmm. You start thinking about the food conversation. When you open a bottle of wine, which we make, which is a Bordeaux, Right Bank, Saint Emilion, Grand Cru. We own 3 vineyards, Chateau Zaya, Chateau Younan, and Chateau Escumbes. It is a blend wine. So you blend 3 different grapes together that don't want to get along with each other. So they fight with each other. So we ferment it, balance it, blend it, age it. They're still fighting. It's like a brother and sister that were fighting when they're 2 years old, and they're still fighting when they're 10 years old. And then when we bring it to the harmony, we cap it. When we cap it, the fight stops. Oxygen ended. For 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And then when we open that bottle, the fight starts again. And when you take the sip of a wine, and then you take a second sip, the taste is completely different. Because the wine is maturing, is stabilizing, is calming itself down, and is coming to peace with itself.
You know, it's interesting. You just said something really interesting, because I've interviewed Monsieur Clouet at Cheval Blanc. I was at d'Angelou's. I've interviewed many, many Bordeaux makers. But when you talk about wine and people get intimidated by this, and they talk about tension, and you and I would define tension differently, but that is a great definition for anybody who doesn't understand the language of wine, which is most people. The word tension is one of the hardest ones to determine. And I love that analysis, which is, the brother and sister fighting as they're being, as oxygen hits them, and then it stops, and then it starts again. That's a great explanation.
That's why I never decant my wine. Actually, the concept of decanting wasn't invented for wine. It was invented for champagne.
The JCB has a champagne decanter.
Yeah, well, any decanter could be a champagne decanter. But many years ago, hundreds of years ago, when they used to make champagne, sometimes the science wasn't available to control the carbonation process, right? So they were heavy carbonated. And when champagne is heavily carbonated, you can't taste the fruits easily. So they used to put it in the glass, and then they used to put it in another glass, and then they used to put it in a cup to drink.
Let the bubble
Let some of the bubble, not all of them, of course, some of the bubble to dissipate. But then they start using it for wine. But for wine, I think it's completely wrong to use a decanter, because when you pay a lot of money for aged bottle of wine because of the process I explained to you. These guys for years, like a genie in the bottle, has been a genie in the bottle, can't breathe until you let the genie out. When you let the genie out, she goes crazy, right? So we're saying with the wine, when you open a cap, right? When you open a cap, especially in case of Bordeaux, because there's a blend, they start fighting again, right? And you want them to fight in your mouth from the start of the wine to the end of the wine. If I decant it, I let it oxygenate, right? The fighting stops. Wine comes to normalization, which is complete stop.
It certainly advances what should be happening in your glass. Why would you want to do that with an old?
Exactly. Now, the only reason I always, when I go to China, I give the lecture to Chinese. I says, you go ahead, decant it. They said, but why? You just explained to us we shouldn't decant it. I said, yeah, but you're different drinker, a Chinese, than the rest of the world. They said, how is that? I says, well, you pull the wine in the water glass and you cheers and you drink the whole thing immediately.
Yeah.
So you're not tasting it slowly and surely to record in your mind the journey that bottle took to get to you. So I said, in that case, just go ahead, drink it as you're drinking Coca-Cola, right? It doesn't matter.
Well, they were adding Coke for a while, so.
Well, I mean, to this day, I mean, in Spain, they add Coke to wine and drink it. And remember, we were talking about safety of the wine, why wine is more important than even a water, right? Up to 1956, which is not long ago, in every elementary school in France, they didn't give the kids water. They gave them wine. They served them wine. Little kids, 5 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, when they're eating lunch and they want water, there's no water.
Very
wine.
Cultural.
Right. It was a cultural, and also they learned back then there was some toxicity in the water. Right.
That's right. They had bleach in the water back then.
Especially after the war. There were so many bombs, so much things. So they said, you know what? Feed the people wine. Don't feed them water. Use only water to take a shower. Right? That's what happened with Roman. You know, of course, you are Armenian. You should be proud that the wine was invented by Armenia about 6,000 years ago.
That's right.
And it was first discovered in Georgia, and then later on another part of Armenia in the Cape. But in Roman time, Rome 2,000 years ago had a 1 million population. The world population back then was 120 million, and Rome had 1 million population. Yeah. And the reason they had 1 million population is because they developed a way to get water to every house, to every street, to every location. And access to the water was a revolutionarily major development, because imagine every inch of water you drink, you had to carry it on your back for long distance, right? But what they were doing, which was a big downfall of it, was they were transferring water with the iron, with lead contamination. So the average Roman used to live 30 to 35 years and died. And they used to have a lot of children that were underdeveloped because they were getting lead toxicity, right? Roman didn't know, they didn't realize. They went off for 100, 200 years. Then they knew there was something wrong with the water, but they couldn't understand what it was, right? So they passed the law, no one should drink water at any time, right? Only wine. You only use water to take a shower, right? That's why Rome, because Rome was so big, so many population, they didn't have enough vineyards in Italy back then to feed all these people wine. So they went to other location which they had a great soil like France. It was Rome who found Saint Emilion in Bordeaux.
Mm-hmm.
It's 3,000 years old that they start cultivating wine. And they used to call it escumbus. Escumbus in Latin means Saint Emilion. And so the soil of Saint Emilion, so further, because it's the only soil recorded in the world that for 2,400 years on that soil, they've been planting grapes day after day, month after month, year after year. And that's why we selected to buy and start making wine in Bordeaux, Saint Emilion, which is the right bank.
You know, you said something about luxury products, and it's a really important concept, and we're going to move into Saint Emilion. And that is, it's not about showing off your wealth. I mean, some people do it for their wealth. They just want to show how much money, what I've done in my life. But what I'm hearing from you is it's really more about the complexity of getting to the luxury good, of a real luxury good, of a real luxurious wine, or a properly made luxurious suit, or a properly made luxurious watch, has a complexity and an emotional connection, an intellectual connection that you don't get from
absolutely. And what you said is an actual problem. A lot of people think that, right? I'll give you an example. We have a lady who's been working with us for a long time, assist us in cleaning the house. So one day she came in and she's wearing a $3,500 Louis Vuitton purse. And I says to her, Maria, congratulations. Who bought that beautiful gift for you? She says, I did, Mr. Younan. I said, good for you. And I said, you like it? She said, Mr. Younan, I always wanted to have it. And I finally bought it. I saved money for 4 years and I finally bought it.
Wow.
She says, now when I put it on my back, I go, people look at me, people talk to me. And because people see a certain aspect of accomplishment and human knowledge is, human curiosity is, I want to know, how did they become successful? When I see people like Elon Musk, Jeff from Amazon, or other wealthy people, right? They spend so much money on luxury, $400 million yacht, $120 million plane. I says, good for them.
Right.
Because number one, that's inspiring and encouraging for me. Right. Second one, it shows people, I mean, where does Elon Musk come from? Nowhere. Where does Jeff Amazon come? Nowhere. They did it themselves, right? So you should celebrate that. You should celebrate other people's success even more than you should celebrate your own success. Because it's reflective. It reflects exactly on you.
It makes you feel like you have a chance, and you should never lose that.
Oh, absolutely.
Never
absolutely.
lose that.
And I think luxury, look, if there was no luxury, even me.
That's socialism, right?
And also a guy like me at age of 62, I said, well, why am I working so hard, right? Why am I working so hard? I have experienced everything. There's nothing out there that I want to experience. So it's time for me to go sit home and then prepare to die.
I don't see that happening for some reason.
Of course. But luxury, it inspires you.
Yes.
It turns all of your senses on.
It does.
Because you see something you never see. Sometimes I see a complicated watch. I be looking at it for hours because it has grand complication, right? It's got sky and moon adjustment, right? And I think about all of the knowledge and thought process went into designing that. All of the knowledge went into creating it, right? And then I develop a desire to have it. But I know in order for me to have it, I have to earn it.
Right.
And I have a purpose to get up in the morning.
Process.
I have a purpose to work hard and achieve things.
Yep.
So I think a luxury is a blessing for human being. And I think human should embrace it because it's something beautiful. Looking at the luxury dress or luxury purse or luxury watch or luxury car or luxury house, it's like looking at a picture of Van Gogh, made by Van Gogh, or any other artist, right? Why do we look at the painting?
Right.
To inspire us, to turn us on,
Right.
to get us to places we never been
Get our
before.
brains
Exactly.
working. So it was wine the first luxury item that you have hotels, you have wine, you have cigars. Was that the first venture into luxury brand?
I tell you, I've been drinking wine for 41 years now, to be exact, and I drink wine every day.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I don't drink water for lunch and dinner. Right? I don't recall when was the last time I drank water for lunch or dinner. Right?
In a plastic bottle.
Right? So I drink wine. Right? I mean, I love white wine. I love red wine. I like champagne occasionally.
But you wanted to share this love by getting into vineyards in Saint-Emilion to produce the best expression of wine that you could under your management?
I knew, not only I knew I could have produced a far better wine, but I wanted to create an expression that you said, an expression that can connect with people, an expression that makes people stop. Seldom when I'm in dinner with somebody, with many people, 5, 6, 10 of us, and people talking while they're having dinner, and I've noticed as soon as they put an unbelievable wine in their mouth, they stop talking, they start thinking. And then the room is quiet.
Yeah.
Because everybody's trying to understand that expression.
Yeah.
Expression is a signature that a winemaker makes in every bottle. And another expression is that every bottle of the same vintage should in some form or shape taste different than the other bottle, even if they were same vintage bottle.
For sure.
Right? So that's why in France, you might not know the barrels we use, the oak barrels we use in France by AOC law, because we are in Saint-Emilion. Saint-Emilion is a right bank. Because we are Grand Cru, the government body is watching us to make sure we're doing everything to the Grand Cru level. Like we have to use the barrels, oak barrels, that the tree is minimum 175 years old.
Really? I didn't know that.
Absolutely.
Is
175
that part of the
years
newer
old.
regulations or something?
No, it's been around for all the time. 175 years old. In America, we have a lot of oak trees in America, right? When they see it, well, they can't cut the oak tree in America because it's against the law.
Yeah, that's right. You can't do it around
so
here.
they have to plant a new oak tree, and while those oak tree matures to certain young age, they cut it so they can make the barrels, the woods out of it, right? So the average oak tree in America, the barrels made is 10 to 15 years. In France, minimum. Every French oak tree has a stamp on it that says that tree must be minimum 175 years old before you cut it, make a barrel out of it.
Wow.
And the reason for that is that as older the oak tree gets, the wood develops more porosity. When it develops more porosity, because the oak tree is a very tight tree, very tight wood, as it becomes age, as us, when we become old, our face starts drooping and, as the oak tree becomes oak, there are the gaps, micro spaces in the oak tree open up. And when you make a barrel out of it and you put wine in it, it goes into those gaps. When it goes into those gaps, a tannin gets released to it slowly and for a long period of time.
There's more surface area when that happens.
Pardon me?
More surface area that the wine's touching.
And a surface area that the tanning is captured, is banked, right? This is one of the many reasons why, in my view, Napa wine can never compete with French wine. Never, ever. Ever. And I tell you another one. In France, in Saint-Emilion, Grand Cru, we cannot water our vineyard. It's against the law.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's against the law. And they watch you with from space. If you water your land, your soil becomes different color. They can catch that immediately. And they said, that 2 acres down there, you just watered yesterday.
That's an important distinction.
A huge distinction. California, Napa is known for have Cabernet Sauvignon, right? And if you take a Cabernet Sauvignon grape in Napa and you take the Cabernet Sauvignon grape in Saint Emilion, which is a Grand Cru in the right bank, you notice the Cabernet Sauvignon in Napa, it's the same grape, same seed, but the grapes in Napa is much bigger than the grapes in Saint Emilion.
The actual size of the berry.
Yes, because you water it so much, it becomes fat. It drinks water.
Right.
The roots don't have to stress themselves to seek water. The roots stay on the surface because they know sprinkler's going to turn on and they be water. They don't need to go dumping up. In Saint Emilion, they said you're not supposed to water your vineyard at all. So the roots has to kept going down and down and down and take natural water from under the ground. And by going down, it picks up all the mineral of the dirt and on the stone under the ground. So if I take the Cabernet Sauvignon in Napa, squeeze it, a lot of juice comes out. But I don't smell the juice, and the juice has no viscosity. My fingers don't stick. If I take the Cabernet Sauvignon from Saint Emilion Grand Cru, squeeze it, a little juice comes in, but you could smell it from distance, and your hand sticks together. Why? Because it wasn't overwatered. Also, remember, in Napa, we have to water our grapes. All that water is a processed water with the chloride in it, calcium in it, and few other medicine that goes into the wine, right? So if I go put a 40 years old vines from Napa out, the root is probably 5, 6 feet. If I go take the 40 years old vine out of Saint Emilion out, the root sometimes is 60 to 70 feet. Because it keeps going down there, and it goes down there, it picks up all the minerals. That's why Bordeaux wine, you taste the terroir, you taste the tanning, is a full mouth. I have not drank California wine in 30 years.
Is that why you went to Saint Emilion and not
That's
Left
exactly
Bank,
what.
or
That's
not Burgundy? Or?
No. Of course, no. Saint Emilion, it is the oldest. First was UNESCO, is a historical
UNESCO,
monument city. Is the oldest recorded place on the earth that the wines have been consistently planted year after year. So the soil is unbelievable.
Yeah,
also,
huge.
remember, in Napa, a million of years ago, Napa was under the water in the ocean.
Yeah.
And when the land is under the ocean, all the mineral of the dirt, soil is stripped away. It's gone. It's washed out. Right? And where in Saint Emilion it's been cultivating itself year after year.
Yeah.
I mean, Roman discovered Saint Emilion 2,300 years ago to plant wine, so they have enough wine for Rome for drinking water.
So that was the first. That was your first vineyard. You know, we're already past the.
No, my first vineyard I bought. One of the biggest wine collector in the world is a French guy. His name is Michel Sachoy. He has the oldest collection, rarest collection, over $1 billion of wines. So him and I went to Bordeaux area. We recognize Bordeaux is the place to be. Burgundy is good, but it's not a complicated drink, right? Domaine Romain County, which is the most expensive wine Burgundy make. I drank one yesterday, 1973.
Oh,
yeah.
Who wouldn't?
Right? And I swear, after my first glass, I switched back to Bordeaux Saint Emilion.
Really? Wow.
To me, it was very light.
Yeah.
It was very light. To me, it didn't touch all my mouth. To me, it didn't leave an expression. You know, if you kiss a good-looking girl, you want to be thinking about that kiss for a long time. And Domaine Roman di Canti didn't give me
That's
that.
interesting.
Yeah. We felt, and when we were buying our first vineyard, we didn't go to say, oh, let's look at the vineyard, see which vineyard we want to buy. We send a soil analyst to many locations. We just pick up the gallon of soil, take it to a laboratory, analyze it, tell us what minerals are under the soil, because we knew what minerals we were looking for. Because the minerals for Merlot versus mineral for Cabernet Sauvignon or a mineral for Cabernet Franc is different, right? Each grapes are different, totally different, which is good because it have different acidicity, different sugar level. So when you blend it, you can create a 4 or 5 dimensional drink, right? This is another flaw with California wine, is a single grape. With single grape, you have 2-dimensional blend.
Well, I think your analysis is accurate. Okay, at the risk of this being a wine show, it takes history like Saint-Emilion, Left Bank, even Burgundy, to establish those differences in the soil. And Napa's not old enough for that yet.
Exactly.
It's hard to know. Maybe Rutherford, to Oakville or something. It's harder to tell regional characteristics, micro-regions in Napa than it is in any other place in the world because they just, stylistically, they go after the same thing, which is these big giant wines. And you're right, because the grapes have a lot of juice. And they don't focus on the terroir differences that are so obvious in Bordeaux.
But also remember, Napa's in America. In America, we all look the easiest distance to success. We don't want to do hard work.
Yeah.
Because it's not in the culture. Why French are the best winemaker, best champagne maker, best cognac maker, best clothing maker, best purse maker, because of culture, right? I'll give you an example. In California, you're allowed to use sulfur in fermentation and in aging your wine, right? 38% of the women in America don't drink white wine or red wine because they get headache from sulfur. I have met so many women that they say, I love wine. I haven't drank it in 7 years. I get a migraine headache that I cannot manage. And I say, here, drink some of the Bordeaux wine. Suddenly no headache because we are not allowed to use sulfur. Sulfur dioxide in the liquid is very dangerous. So that is American way. The second thing with, Broadway, I'm American, right? So, the second bad thing about American wine is that in America, it is not against the law to use coloring in the wine.
There's 79 things you can put in wine.
Exactly. So if your wine is not deep purple, you could use blueberry juice to make it that color. Camas is notorious for doing this. That's why when you're drinking Camas, you think you're drinking blueberry juice, right? We are not allowed to use that at all in our vineyard, right? Sulfur, and I can go on. I can give you many examples that we do in Napa, we don't do in Saint-Emilion because we know it's not good for the wine. But of course, they do it here because they give it a shelf life, right? But we say, if the wine is good, we'll have a shelf life. If the wine is no good, it shouldn't have a shelf life. It's garbage, throw it away. So that culture that goes with France for 4,000 years cannot be replaced with the mentality of 84 years that we've been making wine.
I agree with that.
Because that's all it's been, 84 years.
I agree with that. It's highlight your story. There's the Cucamonga. Cucamonga is one of the original vineyards of America, if not alone California, back in the 1700s. And I went out there to taste the Zinfandel from one of the great makers. He passed away since. And it was a little orange. It was a little prematurely orange. It was this huge 1,500-gallon redwood vat, but it was really good. I really liked it. And I said, okay, you can bottle that for me. He says, okay. I said, but the color's a little off. It seems premature for the color. He says, well, I can fix that. So we go into the lab, and he takes this, mega red or mega purple, whatever they call it, drops it, and then bing, and the whole thing changes. I said, I can't. I can't sell that.
Saint-Emilion, the reason it's called Grand Cru because it has a body, AOC, appellation control.
Original control,
right?
Yeah.
And we're not allowed to water our vineyard. The wine has to find its way all the way to the earth and take the earth water, which is a natural water. We're not allowed to use coloring. We're not allowed to use sulfur.
It's an interesting thought. And our industry is going through a lot of changes, and it's always been like this anyway. Like this picture, like I keep referring to, this is my dad's shop. He was one of the first fine wine shops in Los Angeles, one of the top 5 back in the day, the 70s. You had to decide when you ventured into this and you did the right thing into that side of the industry, I'm going to produce an expression of where I've come from, the luxury brand that I'm trying to create, that people feel something, and they call it a vibration, a tension, whatever you want to call it, that when they taste that wine, as you mentioned, at dinner time, their face changes. That's a decision you had to make, because you could go the other way. You could go to, let's just call it that Napa style, where it's just opulent, big fruit, lots of sugar. Everybody drinks, everybody loves it.
A lot of alcohol.
A lot of alcohol. Yeah, the alcohol
I
content
think
is
as a
true.
scientist, I'm a scientist too,
Right.
by nature, by degree. I think it is wrong. It is totally wrong for a wine to have 15.5% alcohol level, because it masks the taste of the fruit. It is completely wrong.
So
this
wrong,
is why.
like
this
wrong
is
in-
why. This is why in France, especially in Saint Emilion, our average wine is 12 to 12.5%
Right, yeah.
alcohol. There is a huge difference. I mean, we're talking about 30% difference
Yeah.
between 12 and 15.5. And that's another mistake Napa people making, right? They're making,
It's going up too.
and it's funny, they have all these French guys here consulting, helping them, but they're doing it American way. An American way is a wrong way in making wine. And I'm telling you, you bring anybody here, scientifically speaking, I will prove to you why no one in the world today can make wine as good as French do, especially in a region like Saint Emilion. That's why we invested over $300 million in that region, because we find that sometimes I hear vineyards here going for these crazy prices. I said, my God, who's buying them? Who's paying $100 million for the vineyard that the bottle is sold for $40? Who's doing that?
You can't.
Right?
You know you can't.
Right? So we invested there, and I believe now we achieve is based on our rating, Suckling rating. Well, Parker retired, but Suckling, Giuliani, we just received 298, 99 rating last week. In the decanter competition, for the first time in the history of the world, our wine received a gold and silver medal.
Congratulations.
2 different vineyards. I am the only non-French in the history, 1,400 years history of Jurad, Saint Emilion Jurad, which is the oldest society in America.
I saw that picture.
Yes. I am the only American, I'm the only non-French who was invited to be a member of that
That's
society.
amazing.
And every member of that society has 200 to 250 years of vintage experience. When they invited me to become a member, I had only 8 years of vintage, right? Because we pay attention to science. We pay attention to the things that other people ignore to create a wine that talks to you. Our wine talks to you.
Yeah. I gathered that when I tasted it.
Yeah. Long time ago when I married my wife, she says, you know something, every time you drink wine, you don't talk much. I said, I'm sorry. I was going to respond to you after I responded to the wine. The wine was talking to me, right? The wine.
I'm going to use that from now on.
Absolutely.
Because I get in trouble all the time.
Absolutely. The wine takes you places that it mesmerizes you, it captivates you.
That's
a good
what it should
wine.
do.
A good wine, not these wine outside that are ridiculous.
Well,
Ridiculous.
so
in
that's a
America.
question. We should probably wrap it up and do this. We'll continue it some other time. But that's a really good point and a really good question, because it should take you somewhere. It should represent time and place. And there was a woman in Armenia who I had on the show. She said, what other product can you take halfway around the world, plop it on the table and say, this is who we are and when we were? And you can do that every year that wine's in the bottle, and it'll represent something that you want to do. But that's a really good point. Consumerism in America is, most wines are drunk within the first 24 months that they're bottled, and there's not a whole lot of attention paid. You go down to the market. It must drive you nuts to go down to the market aisle
I know.
at Ralph's and Save-On or wherever
I know.
and go, what am I seeing here? These don't represent any of what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And we have to stay the course to teach people of that experience you're talking about right now.
Well, I think if they stretch their imagination and stop drinking this Coca-Cola wine made in Napa that I call, and no disrespect to Napa, but they buy a wine that is made in the rare area by old culture Soon as they drink that wine will tell them all the story.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to talk to them about them, right? But for all the women, 38% of the women in America do not drink wine
That's interesting.
because they get a headache.
I've never heard that
Yeah,
statistic.
yeah. That's and it's sulfur, all sulfur. They put so much sulfur in the wine here that, frankly, is not healthy to drink because of sulfur dioxide. So when sulfur becomes exposed to alcohol, it becomes sulfur dioxide.
You know, we were in Paris, I don't know, a few weeks ago. I took 12 people. Okay. I don't know why I opened my big mouth, but we started in Piemonte, went down to Monaco for the Grand Prix, ended up in Bordeaux. And we went to Cheval Blanc. I did a podcast there. We went to Angelou's, Le Gafflier, and a couple other wineries. And I say this, and my friends are going to tell me about it later when this publishes, but I always bring up that before we left, all of their cellars were full of Napa. That's all they had was Napa gin.
Oh, these guests of yours.
My guests, my friends. And they came back with such an amazing appreciation for the differences. And we went on the left bank as well, of course. And now they talk about Bordeaux.
Yeah. No, Bordeaux.
You know, it's interesting.
Parker was a very bright American sommelier that when he discovered Bordeaux, he wrote in one of his memoirs, I was dreaming about it for months, every night. Dreaming about it for months.
Do you?
I do all the time. One day, by the way, we also have a great team like Dr. Alain Renaud, which worked for Petrus for 20 years. And he has his own vineyard that sold it for Cheval Blanc, LVMH. He works for me, and he's one of our blenders. And he says to me, you know, something interesting about that Zaya Younan 2019. I said, what do you mean? We drink it. He said, when was the last time you drank it? I says, 2 weeks ago. He said a change, a turn. I says, no. He says, yeah. And I had a big meeting, huge meeting. I had 20 people in my office. When he said that to me, I walked out. I asked the girl if we had any. She says, no, we don't. But I knew we had it at home. I went to one of my vice presidents and says, this was a very important meeting. I says, you manage a meeting. He said, where are you going? He said, I'm going home to drink 2019 Chateau I. and I told my wife as I'm driving, my wife, because with Bordeaux Saint Emilion wine, I don't like to decant it, but I do like to open the mouth 1 or 2 hours before it's drank.
Yeah.
Just let it slowly stay.
Yeah, that's
right?
only 3/4 of an inch. That's,
right. So I said, open one. I think something phenomenal happened. And so when I got home, it takes me 40 minutes to get home, she was smiling and half the bottle was gone. I said, oh, you drank it without me? She said, well, Zaya, you got me curious. And I tell you, a lot has gone with this wine in the last 2 weeks. The wine was changing. It's like
that's crazy.
You know, it's like an Arabian horse.
Yeah.
You don't ride an Arabian horse. Arabian horse rides you.
Yeah.
Right? It's like French Bordeaux Saint Emilion wine. They tell you and they show you how to be drank. It is a phenomenal thing. I was infatuated by this. So I went and I bought 2 other vineyards. We have 3 vineyards, Chateau Zaya, Chateau Younan, and Chateau Escumbes. We produce 1 million bottles a year. And we just bought it in the United States, and we are distributing it to restaurant, to our distributor. And also we are selling it online in French Connection Wine and Spirits.com.
First time in America?
First time in America in the last couple of months, yeah. First time
really?
in America.
Is that new?
That new, yeah.
Wow,
yeah.
You're brave.
We own, when I started making a wine, the first 4 years of vintage, which was cumulative 800,000 bottles. After we finished making a wine, I threw it all in a drain. I said,
really?
not good
You're
enough.
not selling that.
I said, not good enough. I said, throw it in the drain. Not good enough.
Interesting.
We're going to keep doing this until we get it right. Yeah, and then we got it right. And I have a good palate because our company not only produced the best wine in the world, we produced the best cognac in the world, best wine in the world, all in France, best vodka in the world, right?
Wow.
We have got
French vodka?
French vodka, 5 times distilled, winter wheats, and distilled in the cognac distillery, copper distillery.
Wow.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
I had a nice glass of cognac last night.
Oh,
really
we have an unbelievable cognac If you're a good friend of Mark, I'll give it to you. And
Lemon.
vodka. And our vodka is magnificent. Our vodka.
I've had French vodka. I've had French Scotch, whiskey. But I'm a huge fan of petite, Grand Champagne.
We have it. We have petit. We have 13 different cognac.
Let me ask you this question. We're going to wrap it up because it's kind of tongue in cheek. But like this new Armenian distributor in Los Angeles, who mostly wine, but he brings in Armenian brandy, and the Armenians always talked about that Churchill loved their brandy, and I've never been able to drink it.
I cannot drink it.
It's harsh,
no.
And it smells like, and it tastes like somebody made it in their own still.
It was distilled once. If it's distilled, you cannot have a cognac that is distilled once.
So this guy brought it, and I gave it a chance. Even the other night when I had this Delemont, I thought, I'll taste it. I couldn't drink it.
No, I couldn't drink
it. And how do you, I learned here every Tuesday tasting wine for 35 years how to represent to a winemaker or a proprietor if I didn't think it was top deck stuff.
Just say shit. That's
But
what I like to hear from people.
I think I have to do that with this distributor, this other one, and say, look, you're not doing yourself any favors by selling this because no one's going to drink it.
First of all, Churchill was an old man that most of his palate was gone. He was 180 years old or something. So it doesn't matter because Churchill drinks it. You drink it. Second of all, brandy, funny. Armenian brandy is one-time distilled. You cannot distill a grape one time to make a cognac out of it. The reason cognac is called cognac, not because made in city of cognac, because we distill it 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
But brandy or Armagnac is distilled once.
Is it?
Is impossible to make a fine drink.
Yeah.
To distill it once, impossible. Nobody can do it in the world. Nobody.
We're going to leave it at that for today. But man, we have to continue. It's such an aspiring conversation to hear your trek to get here, and then your passion for the luxury items, and of course, in my case, in wine, because that's like I started thinking about as you're talking. I'm thinking about, when I get home, what am I going to open tonight? I have friends.
Well, I gave you good 2 bottles for you to open.
We'll open those tonight.
Open them up and enjoy them. Yeah, they're young, but they're good. They're very complex and different than what we drink here, but it's good.
Such an honor to have you here.
Great being here. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Thanks.
We're going to have a great conversation. I can tell that already, but I had started another podcast. I haven't launched it yet. I've only put some shows in the can because I've been doing this. I had this idea. Wine is a very narrow subject for people to listen to. And so I thought I'd try a podcast where it's stories of people that have come to America and been successful, whether it's financial, social, political, whatever. And so I think everybody would relate to those conversations.
They like that stuff. I know. I to be honest with you, I mean, that's how shows like Joe Rogan and stuff like that started, right? I mean, he basically tells people what they want to hear, right? And you always wonder, like, okay, I would never be interested in hearing somebody else's journey because I don't know the detail of his journey. Right. I mean, I came to this country at the age of 13 by myself without my parents even knowing I'm coming to this country. They didn't know that, And I came in at $25 in my pocket, right? But and even sometimes people, when I ask you the journey, you talk a little bit about it. They can't understand the challenges,
That's a good point.
The issues that we had to live with. And if you miss one of those issues, then you just won't be able to repeat it. But
that's a really good point.
But I've noticed the podcast media has become very powerful, extremely powerful media. And where it's now taking over big segment of the TV, where people like to listen to podcasts, right? They like to listen to the real conversation, not a bullshit, not a predetermined. I mean, interesting, educational. It has to have an educational component to it. If it doesn't have an educational component to it, they get bored, right?
You have to. You're totally right, and you have to inspire. Oh, well, I'll use my other one. You have to educate, inspire, and let me turn my phone off, and entertain.
Exactly.
And people, it's a very interesting thought, because I would think that portable, on-demand radio, since radio was before TV in the first place, but YouTube became more popular in the beginning, which was on-demand TV. But now you're right. There's 4 million podcasts.
Yeah, no, a podcast is very
And people are listening.
and then the content of the podcast has to be exciting. People love to learn. People love to see an interactive, raw discussion. That's how reality TV became very popular years ago. But then it was a fake reality TV. It wasn't reality TV. It was all
almost all fake.
Exactly, orchestrated. So then a podcast becomes, and I think podcasts, and we are in early stages of a development of it, and a podcast that is very knowledgeable. I mean, wine is very important. You're focusing on it. Liquor is important as a whole. I mean, why do you drink liquor? Why do you drink? Why do you drink vodka? Why do you drink cognac? Why do you smoke? Right? And someone answered his perspective as why he's doing it. It turned on the senses of the others who were doing it, but they don't know why they were doing it, and that's what excites.